So, this is a show about vampires, right?
In 2012, when this series conveniently started getting published, a virus wiped out all of the humans over the age of 13 and the vampires took over. Because, vampires! Cut to 2 years later, and two boys, Yuichiro and Michaela Hakuela, live in a city controlled by vampires with their adopted family of ragtag orphans. One night, after deciding it's all of their birthdays, because plucky orphans, the orphans try to sneak out only to be brutally killed by Farid, a vampire noble. Ensuring his escape, Mika sacrifices himself for Yu, and the latter escapes, only to be found by the humans and Guren, a general in the Imperial Japanese Army. Cut to 4 years later, and Yu is now 16, and after going too far on a mission, is sent to a high school to make friends. Meeting Shinoa, his appointed army guard, and Yoichi, Yuichiro begins to find a new family, and to get revenge on the vampires that killed his entire old family. Alright, fine, so Mika is also alive and a vampire. Why do I not consider this a spoiler? 'Cause the opening ruins it in the second episode of the show. If you've noticed my levels of snark, it's because it's for as entertaining as Seraph at the End can be. It's not because it's unique or original. In fact, it's far from it. Seraph hits possibly every shonen vampire trope it can, and has been considered Attack on Titan with vampires. It's just not as smart as Attack on Titan can be. In fact, the fun in watching Seraph is just how reliant on tropes it is. Now, I don't mean this is a bad thing. What I mean is that it relies on a lot of pre-existing things. Lots of good things do. Take, for example, Power Rangers. For as good of a show as it can be, Power Rangers is still very silly and relies heavily on its own tropes. Sometimes ones it's created since that show is about 22 years long and Seraph at the End isn't that old. Sometimes it can call attention to this, and sometimes they just fail. And when it fails, it's pretty unintentionally hilarious. And that's what Seraph at the End is, just unintentionally hilarious. I can't tell if the show is trying to take itself seriously at times. One minute you can see Yu getting horribly guilt-tripped, and the next he's crashing a hot-wired car into a power pole. But that's not a bad thing, like I've said. Seraph at the End needs it, because as much as it tries to be as serious as Attack on Titan, it doesn't have the finesse. It's not to say that there isn't anything dark lying underneath the premise of the show, with thoughts of human experimentation, a rather grim and gripping first episode, and Mika's own struggles, but then again we have things like a sniper rifle that can shoot out tigers. Okay, sniper rifle is awesome though. Character-wise, we have all of the stereotypes sitting around. Yoichi is the kind, caring one, kind of like Armin was. Kimizuki is the male tsundere jerk to Yu, kind of like Jean is to Eren. And Mitsuba is acting like an asshole because of a traumatic past. Granted, a character like Shinoa is very interesting. She's smarmy and sarcastic, kind of like Nona from Death Parade without a filter to me. However, I do fear that she's going to be shoved into being Yu's forced love interest because shonen tropes are shonen. Cruel, for now, is just your stereotypical vampire lore to me. She doesn't do anything much aside from forcing the change onto Mika and challenging Humid. Oh, I guess I should talk about Farid. He is a creeper and he does leave hints at a subplot that will lead somewhere, but most of his character to me can be summed up as being a creep and just taunting Mika about his past. Again, however, these aren't all bad things. Because this review is specifically handling the part 1 that aired in spring and not the part 2, it does leave a lot of places to go. And this is a weird case where season 2 or part 2 was announced before part 1 even ended airing. If anything, I don't hate any of the characters besides one, that being Guren. Guren is a ruthless asshole kind of like Farid, but he isn't beyond killing children and using them for his own gain so far. And even though he seems to be kind of getting better, his attitude towards Yu does bother me a bit. Speaking of Yu, at the beginning I hated this character, but he began to grow on me. What started out as a dumber Eren clone, to me became an earnest and lost kid who cares about his family because he came from a massive traumatic loss. Despite this, he's oddly okay with being used by others because it means his path is clear. He can get vengeance and he can save his loved ones. On the other side of this is Mika, my favorite character in the show. Mika's a great parallel to Yu. He has power, in fact he has a ton of power because he's a vampire, and he rarely uses it unlike Yuichiro. However, he wasn't given this choice, it was forced onto him. He wants to save his family, but despite wanting the same thing as Yu, that is, getting revenge on the group that used him, he doesn't trust anyone, and he cares very little for anybody else except for his Yu. And honestly, to me, Seraph would have been a better show if it had come from Mika's point of view rather than Yu's. It's not to say that Mika's story hasn't been done to death, but honestly, given to a more capable writer, it could have worked. And it's in these shades that show Seraph could have been a lot better if more effort was given. I want to see the series delve into certain aspects about young soldiers, what comes about when children are being used. I still do view Mika and Yu, as well as characters like Yoichi, Shinoa, Kamizuki, and even Mitsuba as children, being used by adults on both sides. While on my Twitter I usually borderline joke about this, it could have been a really good turning point for the series. However, it seems like all of the effort was given to other points. And that's honestly Seraph's biggest failure. It tries so hard in some aspects that other aspects get left behind. The soundtrack for Seraph at the end kicks major ass, while some of its animation, especially towards the end, show that the budget ran out. And it gets to pretty hilarious animation physics at times. But at least we're not talking Tokyo Ghoul Route A horrible. My theory on this is that One Wit Studio, the animation house, is a subsidiary of Production IG, and had its budget allocated elsewhere. During Seraph's airing, Kuroko no Basket and Ghost in the Shell Rise were being animated, and the money may have been given to them, / they might have been dividing the budget between part 1 and part 2. But hey, at least we got the kick-ass openings, XU, and the ending scapegoat. This is another series with a broadcast dub. This time directed by Jerry Jewell, this one was more hit and miss with me. Though I do like Ian Sinclair, he was an odd choice for Kamizuki, and I felt Alexis Moore's Mitsuba bordered on annoying. I have nothing against either actor, but I do feel like better fits could have been made, such as Clipper Chafin or Joel McDonald on Kamizuki, and maybe Megan Emmerich or Brittany Karbowski on Mitsuba. Felicia and Jill Shinoa was very good, but there are 3 big standouts in the show. Eric Bale's Ferret is, for lack of a better term, exceptionally creepy. Justin Brenner, for a first-timer, does an excellent outing as Michaela, and gets his personalities and emotion out well. But he also does an amazing job playing the younger Mika that seems to haunt you in his dreams. And honestly, the biggest savior of the show is Micah Soulsad's Yuichiro. He honestly saved this character for me. While I have nothing against the original Seiyu, Micah can get across more of Yu's remaining earnestness while playing the reunition scenes amazingly well. It proves why you're hearing Soulsad in more Funimation dubs. Speaking of those reuniting scenes... Okay, so Seraph may or may not be total Fujobi. Just a little bit. So in the end, do I recommend Seraph at the end? Yeah. Seraph is kind of stupid and trope-tastic. In fact, it's one of those guilty pleasure series. It's got enough meat to dig into it, but parts of it can be rather silly, whether or not it's intentional. Currently, Funimation has season 1 on its website and Hulu, but the broadcast dub is behind the Funimation site paywall. A second core of it is airing in October, and the streaming rights have been given to Funimation, but there is no word of a broadcast dub at the time of this recording. Well, that's one vampire show down for October. I wonder what else is coming. It's not like anything diabolic. Oh god damn it, I have to review Diabolic Lovers now, don't I? Stay tuned, Anime America.
Hey, we got a website. You should check it out. Link is in the description box down below. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr, so follow us. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe to Anime America Podcast for more awesome reviews. If you're interested in anything of pop culture, check out our other awesome channel, Pop Spectrum. You'll be glad you did. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned, Anime America.